Yeah, so I'm here today to talk about, take about 10 minutes to talk about something a bit different. So I really wanted to cover, a summary of the blog post that one of my colleagues and teammate, Jonathan Victor, who is one of the leads of the ecosystem team and also part of the TLDR team, he actually put together a summary on the state and direction of Filecoin. So I just wanted to go in and share a little bit about the content. And again, it's basically a topic that we are super passionate about, having, worked in the ecosystem for a couple of years. And also it's a possible perspective and viewpoint on Filecoin. So would also love to hear some feedback from all of you guys as I go along with it. Well, what is Filecoin? So I think right now, a lot of us think of Falcon and know Falcon really well as the largest decentralized storage network that exists today. I think we are very familiar that, there are 4,000 over storage providers, basically real businesses that are contributing, 16 exabytes of storage capacity to our network. And when we turn our lens even to the Web3 space, Falcon is known as the de facto storage layer. We are hosting over 90 million NFTs. That's a huge number and great hockey stick growth if you kind of look at the chart. However, I wanted to present that, maybe the vision actually includes a lot more than that. And, there has been a narrative that we have been talking about where Filecoin is more than just storage. And, what does that more than just storage actually entail? We believe that the vision actually includes the infrastructure to store, distribute, and transform data. And when we take a step back and we look at what are the capabilities that are required to create value out of data, which is a very valuable asset right now for humanity, or even the capabilities that, the Web2 cloud offerings provide is a lot more than just storage. So if you use AWS or you use Microsoft Azure and so forth, you're going there and, you are storing your data, but more importantly, maybe you are also trying to transform the data and get insights from the data. So, using this lens, you can kind of understand that there are a lot more capabilities beyond storage that are required to run applications, enable and unlock a lot of different use cases. So then we put forth this view that, Filecoin actually, if you kind of use that lens to understand Filecoin, it seeks to enable open services for data. And this diagram here is something that we found ourselves, particularly useful to anchor the mental model. So if you look at the top part here, you have three main off-chain capabilities. And, these are what we call as open services. We have made a lot of progress on the storage markets, which is something that, everyone is very familiar with. And then probably, most of you guys in the community are also familiar that we have been making, tremendous R&D effort and progress in retrieval markets, basically being able to enable hot storage and also CDN quality, kind of retrieval. That's really important to unlock, a lot more use cases. And lastly, of course, the large scale compute over data as a very important capability and third pillar here. And then if we look at this lower section here, there are two very critical on-chain protocol upgrades that enable and really uplift and enhance, the capabilities that I've mentioned above. And the first one that you are very familiar with and it's imminently on the horizon is the launch of the Filecoin virtual machine, basically introducing programmability to the protocol. And then there's another piece around what we call interplanetary consensus. Again, there are several working groups, working on this right now and a strong R&D effort. And this effort is around how we can scale so that, we can go on to, being able to support the scale that is required to build even Web2 applications in a Web3 way. So if we take this whole picture together and maybe, use this mental model, I will share a little bit about all these different components and then kind of tie it all up together for all of you. So I'm going to talk first about storage markets. Again, I think this information is, something that all of you are very familiar with. So I think what I wanted to point out is that we have actually taken, if you look at like the past year, we have made like a lot of progress in terms of like amassing a lot of hardware to the network. So as you know, there are 4,000 over storage providers and now offer about 16 exabytes. So if you even look at the chart, it's an incredible amount of growth and a lot of hardware that is, brought to the network that people can then, contract with to store data. A key point here is that while it has focused a lot on scalability and verifiability, there is some complexity involved. So like right now, Filecoin as it is today is actually best suited for cold storage, right? And then the rest you can read through a little bit, and there's more detail in the blog post as well. So if I kind of like turn the lens, also still in the storage markets and what's going on, what's the demand situation for the storage? We have been focusing a lot of the efforts on data onboarding right now. There are several like consumer-friendly, user-friendly on-ramps available, as well as the Filecoin Plus program to bring useful data onto the network. And we've seen like incredible progress so far. If you look here, we're actually leading the pack in a very strong way in terms of like storage utilization. So utilization has grown by 15x. It's crazy, right? From the beginning of the year. And if you kind of look at, the other what's happening in the space more broadly, we actually have 96% market share across decentralized storage players in terms of like petabytes of data stored on the network. Now I'm moving on to retrievals, and the way that I want to kind of like talk about the other capabilities is that I'll talk a little bit about it. And then, here are some things and ways that you can keep track of the progress, because a lot of these things are in like strong R&D pipelines. And it's also always a joint effort with the community. So there are, several moving parts here. So on the retrieval side, it's basically the second pillar of capabilities. It basically allows, when you do it in a decentralized way, we believe that you can get performance delivery at much lower cost than traditional solutions. Of course, it's very difficult to enable like CDN quality retrievals in a decentralized way. So the approach that we have taken is to let the ecosystem evolve and, solve for different components that are required to build this open retrieval market. And you can see some of the components here on this first chart here where, what are the building blocks of a healthy decentralized retrieval market? You can see 8 that are listed here. So basically, the Retrievals Markets Working Group is comprised of like several members of the ecosystem, and they're all working on different pieces, which really brings together the power of the decentralized community. Just to flag, there are actually 2 exciting projects here. So there is Falcon Saturn, which is a Web3 CDN that was just launched, as well as Falcon Station here, which was announced at Phil Lisbon just last month. So it's a desktop app where you can contribute underutilized CPU resources. You can basically check out these 2 projects. Okay, and moving on to the third pillar here, which is the large-scale compute over data. And again, this is the ability for users to be able to transform data to draw useful insights for business cases or, various applications and so forth. So when we look at compute over data, we find that there are different use cases that actually require different types of compute, right? And Juan has this famous triangle here, whereby you do want to achieve all 3 of these points, but then the truth is that there are trade-offs between these things. So when we look at compute over data, you can imagine that there are multiple types of compute, and they could exist as L2s over the base L1 layer here. And it's important to note that actually the storage providers have some compute resources, right, as a function of needing to run storage proofs. So these are co-located with the data, and it actually makes it easier for Filecoin to leverage that to set up decentralized compute markets in the future. And in terms of like staying abreast with the developments here, there are multiple types of compute being developed. I think many of us have heard of Bacalhau, which is a large-scale parallel computing, as well as Lurk, which is another project that is doing cryptographically verifiable compute. Again, there is a link here and also in the blog post where you can stay up to date with the developments of the Compute Over Data Working Group. So moving on actually to the second part, which is the on-chain protocol upgrades that are coming up. So the bottom half here, spend a bit of time to talk about the FVM, and I will talk a little bit about interplanetary consensus, just to complete the full picture. I think that the Falcon virtual machine is something that's really exciting on the horizon. And the way that we see it is that it provides the expressiveness to deploy and trigger, various services on Falcon. And this actually allows Falcon to operate as a fully fledged L1. And you can imagine much more sophisticated offerings. So the important thing here is that it enables computation over Falcon state, but that is very different from the large-scale compute over data that we talked about before. So think of it as like mini compute, basically. And there are further details here around like how how the kind of architecture for the VM looks like, and you can also follow the development that the progress that the team has made over here, which is basically their GitHub and as well as their website. So the key thing to note here is that the first release of the Falcon virtual machine will actually be EVM compatible, meaning that you can basically very easily copy over and fork over any EVM contracts from other EVM chains and run them on Falcon. And as mentioned, we expect that there are going to be a new slew of startups. In fact, something that is very different and centered around the value of data. You might even refer to it as like a decentralized data economy. I think that really sets Filecoin on its own like unique and differentiated path as an L1. It's something that we are super excited to look at, because I think it's something that the space doesn't have, and really comes from the fact that we had spent many years building the primitives for storage and verifiable storage, and look to the future on like what that can unlock as well. Some of the things that we are looking towards that is like a DeFi economy. There's actually a very strong economic loop that can exist in Filecoin, because we have these 4,000 over businesses that need collateral. And that's already a native kind of market that exists right now. Things like perpetual storage and auto renewal of deals. These make Filecoin storage services work even better. And so on and so forth, which we are excited to explore with the community. Lastly, there is a piece around interplanetary consensus, which is really allowing Filecoin to scale effectively to deliver internet scale services, right? So the interesting approach that we have taken to that is that it allows subnets to be created, which all anchor down to the main chain. And I think that you can read more about it in the link here as well, which is also provided in the blog post. Finally, to summarize, the services and the composability of the services can lead to actually very strong economic loops, as well as compounding demand for the services of the Filecoin network. And the thing is that all of these actually ultimately anchor into the Filecoin blockchain, and so generate demand for block space. So I think that we are on the cusp of like a very exciting time next year for the network itself. And to recap, Falcon's ambition goes beyond being a storage network, but to enable open services for data and really unlock the decentralized data economy. I've left a link here. You can definitely feel free to check it out. I think it's about a 10-minute read. There are more details in the blog post, and Jonathan Victor covers them in ways that are much more eloquent than me. So definitely I encourage you to check that out. And if you have any questions or, you want to get involved, if you love writing, we're very happy to work with members of the community to put out more insights and interpretations basis their experience of Filecoin and, looking to the future as well. You can drop us a note at the tldr@protocol.ai email address, and you can also reach out directly to me on Filecoin Slack if so. Thank you so much.